Welcome, Caroline. Great to have you here today. Could you tell a little bit about yourself and how you started to get into custody at BNY Mellon?
Oh dear. So I guess there's the official story and then there's the unofficial story.
I go for the unofficial one any day.
I was on 2 weeks after my third child, my surprise third. I don't know if anybody knows about the surprise thirds. And I got a phone call from my boss at the time saying, hey, would you like to come back and add to your business custody? I won't tell you what I said, but it may not have been very positive at the time. My background was always working on trading floors, really building products, businesses, disrupting things. I had enjoyed that for quite some period of time. But the opportunity, as I kind of got out of my sleep deprivation, the opportunity to actually come into an area that is multi-decades, in fact multi-centuries deep, super matured and disrupt from within was just hugely appealing. Probably controversial, but arguably I don't think custody had experienced a lot of innovation. Perhaps fast innovation, pockets of innovation, but I don't think it had really taken advantage of the unique position we have as a very trusted entity, a core part of the ecosystem of the financial industry, and really paired that together with that trust and innovation marriage that could really catapult us into the future. And make sure that we do our part to actually shape the future of the financial industry. So that actually, once I cleared the haze of sleep deprivation, that became a very attractive thing for me. I'm 5 years in, so I'm not a custody native, probably a newbie in some respects, but very much enjoying it.
Sounds awesome. One thing I'd like to ask is that if you think about custody, maybe it would be good we talk always about custody. If people come from the crypto side, custody is storing cryptocurrencies, but there's a lot of other things that you have custody of.
Yep.
And could you explain what is custody?
Yeah, so custody is interesting because it is very much, at its core, it is safekeeping, right? It is protecting clients' asset from risk of theft or loss. Very simply. In Bank New York, we safekeep $45 trillion worth of assets. So, it's not a small number. I mean, I think that's somewhere around 50–60% of the world's GDP. The assets range from all types of assets, so traditional equities, fixed income, to alternative assets, ETFs. I mean, we were one of the first companies to really stand with our clients as they started to diversify more into alternative assets. Our clients are institutional clients. They're global. We access something, I think it's around 107 markets at this stage. And for me, the important thing about custody is it really acts as an enabler for clients to actually maximize the value of their assets. So we start after a client has made their investment, they've executed their trades. We kick in then in the post-trade environment, as it's fondly referred to, and we safekeep the assets. We do a lot of servicing, corporate actions, et cetera, on top of that. But really what's important is we enable services like liquidity management, securities lending, collateral management off the back of custody and the safekeeping that we do, which is where clients really get the value out of their portfolios.
Cool. And now jumping to the digital age. When we look at digital assets and the custody strategy from BNY, how did you get there? What is the strategy? How did you bring in partners? Can you tell a bit about that?
Yeah, so it's been a very exciting journey. It's one of the things that actually attracted me to Bank of New York was that spirit of innovation that exists in the DNA. Obviously, we've got trust at the epicenter of what we do as well, but taking risks is part of what we do on behalf of our clients. So the journey that we've been on, not too dissimilar to the journey we went on with, again, alternative assets, and as clients start to diversify, we are looking at digital innovation in two ways. One is obviously the digital innovation that exists within the current, call it framework of what we do, and then as clients start to diversify into digital assets. So we started working on this actually a couple of years ago in earnest, as we started to partner with our clients who were showing a lot of interest in digital assets. And digital assets in its broadest sense, so not just cryptocurrency. We're seeing a lot of interest from clients across the whole spectrum. Arguably, cryptocurrency is their more immediate, interest in the area that they're going into, with tokenization being, depending on the type and depending on the client, a little bit more of a longer lead time. So what we started to do was really think through at the core, what is custody for a digital asset? It's actually not too dissimilar than custodying for any other asset. And we came at it through that principle. How do we apply the risk mindset that we have and the, again, multiple decades, centuries of learnings that we've had applying KYC, AML, BSA, all the things that we do as part of our bread and butter. How do we apply this to the uniqueness of digital assets and the uniqueness of the technology that supports it? And ultimately, the wallet infrastructure management and key management, again, in some ways, it's back to old school vault management. So it is part of the core of what we do. So we applied that risk mindset and those core principles that applied very easily. And then we started really, part of our philosophy at Bank of New York is to leverage partners across the ecosystem and integrate them deeply within us. So really, truly have strategic partnerships, which is obviously where the partnership with Chainalysis came to play. And really looking at how do we have shared ethos and a shared value set with the partners who then amplify, our team to the kind of A-team that we need to bring to bear for this. And then it's do our part, right? We see it as an obligation of ours to service our clients. Clients are going there. We need to be there for them. When I say risk, it is uncommon for traditional banks to go where the rule set is not prescribed. So for us, as unnerving as it is to run a business where I can't just take rule X for jurisdiction Y and apply a set of controls to it, it's doing our part on behalf of our clients, on behalf of the industry, to really actually start to drive the framework that is needed in this industry to help protect the client assets, again, the core of what we do. So that's been a very fascinating journey, something we're very proud of, that, again, we are taking that risk on behalf of our clients, and hopefully doing our part to start to bring, this market to a maturity level in a safe way that makes sense for all.
That's awesome. So on one thing is partners, and one thing is the idea and the strategy. It's like, it's great to get this inception, we want to go in this direction. But one of the big challenges that I think everyone meets when you're going to get into especially crypto and digital assets is that you need a team. You need to hire or assemble a team. And we all know that it can be very hard to find the right talent. How did you set the team? How did you pick them from internal, attract the right hires and so on? So just curious about that journey.
So this is actually the thing that excites me the most about this space. It is the fusion of the different diverse talent in this space. You've got the traditional die-hard bankers. You've got the crypto gang, as I like to refer to them. You've got the diversity of age, the diversity of perspectives. It's been a fascinating psychological journey to go on, seeing the fusion of all of these come together. For me, we've been so fortunate. We attracted in a lot of talent from across the crypto industry. No small feat, trying to attract folks into a traditional trust bank. But I think the attraction is, and again, this might be a very controversial statement, I think it is a degree of complexity to bring new products, new features, new businesses to life within the crypto industry. It is multiple times more difficult to do that from within a traditional bank. So I think there's a real attraction to talent who really want to do the remarkable to come in. I feel like I'm sales pitching Bank of New York talent. Anyone who wants an application, come get me. But for me, I think that's been fascinating. Then what we've done is we've bred a lot of talent from within. We've got a saying that's caught on in Bank of New York, we're making custody cool. I would imagine, again, my own personal story 5 years ago, I didn't graduate college going, oh my God, I really want to be a custodian. I'm not sure if there's many people that did, but now we're getting a lot of people from within the bank that are really genuinely wanting to come work in this team. It's known as the cool team. The learning curve is fascinating, and for me, what's been a really interesting journey is if you think about cryptocurrency and digital assets in more general, it's the great democratizer. Yeah. Right, so a veteran in this space is what? How many years old? Like, it doesn't go multiple decades deep.
No. It's a decade. Yeah.
So I think the barriers to entry are much lower in that respect. So again, for me, to be able to get people up that learning curve, leverage partners like yourselves and all the other partner firms that we've engaged with to create that fully virtual team of people has been really fascinating. I think it takes a lot of grit and resiliency to keep going on the journey, especially when we're in fairly uncharted waters. So for me, the retention side is what I worry about a little bit more than the attraction side. Mm-hmm. Making sure that everybody has the energy to go on the journey, because I do feel like we're very much in the thick of it now. So again, it's that diversity of talent. I think if you're into people management, this is definitely a very interesting experiment.
Makes sense. Cool. So on I know that a lot of banks out there, when I have conversations with banks over the last 2 years or so, everyone is like starting this journey, and there's a lot of like different stages in that journey. And the way I've worked with your team in the bank, I clearly feel that you're further ahead than a lot of the banks, and clearly have like seen this early and managed to execute it and do it really well. And when I then look at that, I'm curious is there any advice you want to give to those who are further behind? You can also throw in curveballs for them so they continue
they
to stay behind. But maybe just on the nice side, what should they do? How to bring them on this journey here?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. Look, I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, maybe now, on the traditional banking side, and I found it really interesting. There was 2 schools of thought. One was very much, we don't really know what we need to do, but we know we need to get involved. And then the other school of thought is, oh yeah, when it comes, we'll get involved. Which I thought was very fascinating. When it comes, I mean, it's like saying ETFs are a fad, and it's like decades gone. So for me, I think now is the time. Even though we're further ahead, I would argue we were still a bit behind in terms of getting in. I think the real challenge, and again, I sit here managing 45 trillion of assets, the real challenge is creating the capacity to actually really build for the future, and you have to have conviction in the fact that now is the time, and there isn't an opportunity to opt in or out. You need to be involved in this, and that capacity comes in like hardcore dollar investment, but also education. So I feel like that's the most important thing, is to create the capacity, partner with the right people, get the right teams in to actually educate yourself. It's a straight learning curve. But going on that journey and going on it fast, it's super critical. So I think, if folks aren't getting into it, I think, tomorrow is the day. And again, being very open to the ambiguity that does exist. I think that's another piece of advice is you'll learn from corners of the industry and corners of the world that you would never expect to learn from. I think we've all become entrenched in the way of doing things, and I think it's a lot of relearning and not just bolting on to the existing. It's a whole new refresh look at how we want to bring custody services to the market.
Makes sense. I think many would ask that if you look at crypto and a traditional bank is 2 completely different things. But the way that I see it is like you're basically safekeeping a lot of different assets. Mm-hmm. And at some point you had like, okay, crypto is also an asset. When did that happen, and why did you decide to say like, well, maybe it's just something we buy and it's fine? when did you decide to go in-house? This is us.
Yeah, so for me, this actually comes back to one of the things that I think is a bit of a fragility in the market, where the client experience. Okay, so if you think about our clients, we have institutional clients. Generally speaking, they have a diversity of assets in their portfolios. So they could have traditional assets and digital assets, if we keep it that simple. It is not an optimal client experience to have to go, if you're a client, to have to go to custodian X for your digital, custodian Y for a certain type of traditional asset, custodian X then for another type of traditional asset. I mean, that's just a very, very, very inefficient model, a very costly model, very, highly complex model for clients to have to manage. So for us, one of the most important tenets was to be able to build and design a product offering that was interoperable across the traditional and the digital space. Now that's hard, and it's definitely much harder to do that than if we were to actually just plug and play into a crypto custodian and bring them in as part of our network and have them as, a bit of an extension to us, but not fully integrated. So for us, it was very important, and a design that we set out in the beginning was to actually create a fully interoperable platform that was within the walls of Bank New York. It also speaks to the trust and safety side. Very important for us that, to control what we can control. We can't control the public chains and the integrity of, but we can control the private keys. And it was important for us to have full control over them and integrate, again, partners across that value chain who could help us optimize how we do that. So that was a core part of our design and our philosophy.
And again, I would say I remember a point in time where we had discussions internally in Chainalysis around where is this going, what is happening, and realizing that just the fact that there is for the reason you explained before, you can collateralize between your different assets, you basically have a better customer experience. The natural end game for crypto custody has to live with the biggest custodians of the world.
Yep.
And that's also why we felt that this collaboration was extremely important, because this is how it is. Mm-hmm. So do you see this as being one of the building blocks that were kind of needed for the rest of finance to enter, because they're relying on you for many services for custody as well?
100%. We always say that custody is just the first step in the rung of the ladder. It's what gets us excited actually in Bank of New York, not just for the industry, but selfishly for ourselves. We offer a suite of different services, whether it's collateral, whether it's lending, whether it's FX, execution. So the ability to be able to get the basics right, custody, and then build from that, for me is really, really important. And again, that helps clients optimize the value of their portfolio, like I mentioned before. Also, I think, to add credibility to the industry, I think having the likes of Bank of New York with our trust brand come into this market, for us to be able to bring in the institutional standards of asset safety and client protection, I would hope would start to put some guardrails around the industry that would, again, mature this space in a very purposeful and safe way, and adds, a lot more credibility, again, not just to the crypto side, but as we start to expand even further than cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we had Raj from Solana on stage yesterday, and one of the things he mentioned were basically the generation of the internet. They were educated and raised on basically dancing babies and cute kittens. Mm-hmm. And the generation of crypto, we learn a lot through NFTs and what is happening there and so on. And I think education is a very big part of this, and broadening this education into the space. Can you talk a little bit about how you've seen the role of education as being core for the growth of your journey and the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think my brain's about to explode with the amount I've learned in the last 2 years. It's constant. And I think you got to settle into that a little bit and accept the fact that, you don't do course X and get, understand, everything you need to understand, because it's such an evolving industry and it's moving so fast. For us, the key to education was our partner groups, and actually partnering with, across the industry with our regulators. I think just you learn so much from the questions that you get, where you're not assuming that you know some answers. So leveraging partners to supplement us and bring us to the next level, and then really truly deeply listening to the questions that were coming from the regulators in the industry and from our clients, because interestingly, a lot of them are investing in this product, but they're equally asking us a lot of questions and learning themselves. So it's been, I would say, a very rewarding journey going on. Again, we're a global bank, so we deal with almost every regulator out there, but it's been a very rewarding journey having a lot of education sessions with the regulators, challenging ourselves in a two-way conversation to really think through the unique risks and therefore educate ourselves even further, and then inform our designs and make sure that we're building it in the right way. So education is key. I do think there's an immaturity of education across the industry. There's, for me personally, I go back to capacity. I'm not day-to-day digital assets. So creating the capacity and, housing the 3 kids away somewhere and looking after a business and doing all of that, where do you get the time? So I think that comes back to people, making sure that we're surrounded by the right people, the right team, who can stay out in front of it.
Makes sense. When you now look at the entire industry, there's the financial institutions, then this journey, we've seen them for many years. There's the trailblazers in like the different crypto exchanges, also customers in the space. On that group, is there any advice you would give them? Because this is kind of, they're like home in crypto, but the new part is more like on traditional finance.
Yeah.
Should they store their assets with Bank of New York? What should they do?
Of course. I mean, that's obviously the answer.
Yes.
I think it comes back to that two-way listening.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's very easy to come into this space and look at the traditional banking world, if I just brush us all with the same brush, and just assume that we're potentially a little bit stodgy and that we don't move very fast. I think there's a lot we can learn from the crypto industry to move faster, but I think it is really taking the time to understand the details of things like AML, BSA, why they matter, and why a lot of the, call it infrastructure that we've built and perfected over the decades exists, and how you can actually apply all of those safe principles in an agile way so that you don't stifle innovation, but you marry the two together. So I think it's appreciating that, listening to appreciate it, and not just assuming that it's there. And I think it was the lady from OFAC that was mentioning this. The intent shouldn't be to stifle innovation. It should be to protect clients and protect the right type of clients. So I think it's having an appreciation and going on an education journey to understand the details of, again, the compliance side of banking. It may not sound like fun, but I do think it is a very important thing. And I think that's where you start to see the fusion of the traditional and the more digitally native industries start to come together. And I think that's where we meet in the middle.
I'd like to ask you a last question, and that's about the future. If you now look at crypto, you've been part of this journey yourself and so on, and where do you want this to go? What is like the dream of the world 5 and 10 years from now, and how do you see all of this merge and end? Like,
Yep.
It never ends, but it's moves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't end.
No.
So for me, I think to mature this industry in a way that is safe, right? I think to get past what sometimes feels like a little bit of chaoticness, and actually integrate this in a real way. I think it's moving even past the crypto side to full digitization. It's funny when you run a custody business, you start talking about physical vaults and pieces of paper and wet signatures and things like this. And this day and age, it's ridiculous. We've got climate issues, and we talk about physical vaults and pieces of paper. So just very basically is to actually start to move into the future where we're as fully digitized as we possibly can be. And that we don't have, and I know I say this as a custodian, that we don't have middlemen in the way just to be in the way. That we all serve a very unique purpose and that we can actually integrate together as true partners. And you're seeing that shift more and more, right? You're seeing less and less of the defending of the turf and the sticking within this is the swim lane I've always been in and I need to stay in it, and more partnerships and collaboration across the industry, and folks willing to change shape and shift a little bit to make sure that, again, we're bringing value. If you're not bringing value, then you don't deserve to be part of the party. So that's what I would hope for the future, and move us out of a vault ideally. That would be nice.
Move us out of a vault from the custodian.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Thank
I really
you.
enjoyed this conversation.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.